Good morning, my name's Fiona Brown and I work in the programme team for the Housing, Health and Care programme in North East and North Cumbria. Fantastic to see so many people joining the call this morning, so thank you for that. Just before we start, could you just introduce yourself in the chat and just let us know if there's anything that you're particularly keen to see developed for people who are living with dementia or those who are supporting people with dementia. That would be really great for us to get a sense check from you. Just a couple of pieces of housekeeping. We are recording the session today. We will share slides with you after the event. And the other issue just for you to consider is that we do send out a feedback form to people who attend these sessions. It's really important for us to try and help us develop that event programme going forward. So if you do get the opportunity to fill that in, that would be really appreciated. So our session this afternoon is looking at how we support older people living with dementia. Really timely, given that it's Dementia Action Week this week, and there are a number of great events going on, not least the Happy event on Wednesday afternoon at, I think, 4 o'clock. So if you haven't signed up for that, please have a look at that. We move on. So I wanted just to reintroduce you to the 5-year plan for the Housing, Health and Care programme. And I know it's something that people will have come across before. It sets out our 3 priorities, and for us, the one that we're having a look at this morning, very much that supporting older people to live independently. We know that the challenges we've got are around making sure that we've got suitable accommodation, but also choice for people as we age. And we've set ourselves ambitions that we'll do that by maximising the access to home adaptations. Agree design standards for care-ready homes, and we'll hear from Helen this morning from West Yorkshire Combined Authority about their design standards for people with dementia. We want to promote dementia-friendly housing approaches, and Phil from North Tyneside Age UK will talk us through a particularly scheme in North Tyneside, which is a really good scheme. And we're also looking to build more extra care homes for older people. But I just wanted to set you a bit of a challenge this morning and wanted you to give some thought to what do you think is the biggest challenge that faces those people who are living with dementia or caring for people with dementia. So if you could just vote in the chat. I think Satty's going to try and set us up a poll. Do you think the biggest challenge if you had dementia would be to maintain your own independence? Do you think you might face social isolation? Do you think your biggest challenge would be a choice in where you live? Or do you think it would be impact on your family relationships? So if you just want to take 2 or 3 minutes to consider that, and then we can have a look at the poll in the chat to see how we're doing with that.
Has that worked at all?
It's worked.
Yeah, it's worked, yeah.
Right, brilliant, thank you.
Just while we're doing that, can I ask people just to mute their mics if they're not on, if they're not speaking? It's just we've got a bit of feedback at the moment. Thank you. Okay, thank you for that. I think that's really interesting, isn't it? So we've given you 4 options there. What's the biggest challenge do we think people might face if either themselves or their family members suffer from dementia? And obviously the biggest thing we're saying, the biggest challenge in terms of services that we deliver or services or options that we might give to people is to maintain their independence. So I think if we can just hold on to that as we go through this morning's session, we've got some fantastic speakers. Hopefully we can hear some really good examples. If we can just think about that as we hear those presentations, but also I think importantly to me, if there is something that you hear today that you think is something we could adopt within the North East or North Cumbria, please again put that in the chat. I think we need to set ourselves a bit of a challenge about how we're going to make the step change in the region to actually make sure that people have got choice and suitable accommodation as they age. So if I can now hand you over to Helen. Helen can introduce herself and take us through her presentation. Thanks, Helen.
Thanks very much, and thanks for having me here today. I'll just share my screen. Okay, there we go. Can you see that? Yeah. So yes, I'm here sort of representing West Yorkshire today. I'm from the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and when our mayor was first elected in 2021, her housing pledge included this a commitment to establish a dementia-ready housing task force. So the presentation today is about how we've done that in West Yorkshire. I don't know how many people know how much about dementia, so I'm just quickly going to run through a few basics at the start to show, you know, really the reasons why we're focusing such a big part of our agenda on dementia. So the numbers of people with dementia are rising at a really significant pace, and the chances are you'll know somebody who has dementia. You can see from the slide that there's 1 million people who have dementia now, but by just 2050, this figure is going to be more than 2 million. So a doubling in 25 years is quite astonishing, and we've only really got a very small amount of specialist housing for about 5% of over 65s. 2/3 of people with dementia live at home in a normal home, and 1/3 live on their own. So they're, you know, we were not going, the best will in the world, we're not going to have enough specialist housing for people with dementia. We need all homes to be dementia ready. In terms of what this costs the UK economy, you can see some figures there. It costs 26.3 billion a year, and there are 25% of acute beds occupied by people with dementia. So, so really, this just makes economic sense as well as kind of moral sense. It's also what people want in their lives, is to remain in their own home. And just in case you've got a very kind of surface understanding of dementia, just to kind of go into a little bit about what that is, it's a set of symptoms. It's not a disease on its own. It's when the brain is damaged by other diseases, and it's progressive. Those symptoms that gradually get worse, and we've also got the issue that most people with dementia are older, not all, but most people are. So they have those other impairments of older age that you can see there. And it's not just memory, but memory is included. It also affects people's ability to learn, to reason, and can lead to high levels of stress and perceptual problems. And that means that people with dementia are twice as likely to fall and 3 times more likely to fracture a bone. And they have that reduction in quality of life. The isolation that was in the question at the start is a huge factor, and boredom. And the design of the home can help with all that, and that's what's behind the criteria that we're using now in West Yorkshire. So this diagram sets out how the task force works, and I'll keep referring to it during the presentation today. This task force was set up in 2022 and is made up of stakeholders from public, private and third sectors, including those listed here on the left-hand side, but especially the West Yorkshire Housing Partnership. They're a key partner in this. There are 15 social housing providers in West Yorkshire, and each of those partners has a dementia champion who's working to improve their policies and their physical housing stock too, to make it more dementia friendly. And those dementia champions meet quarterly, and they share that useful information and hopefully make that load lighter. We know this is not a very good time to be announcing new requirements on social housing providers who are already kind of overwhelmed by financial and other health issues like damp and mold, for instance. So we wanted to make these criteria as easy as possible to implement, but I think that the impact of them can, you know, really far outweighs the effort that goes in. So focusing first on the dementia ready housing stock, if you know what someone with dementia, you probably recognise some of the things here that can help someone to navigate everyday life. And more on that wardrobe later. That was a new one on me the other day. See if you can guess why it's special, and you can, if you can't think of any other questions for me at the end, you can ask me about that, or you can tell me what you think it's for. So while some of these things shown here are sort of installed quite easily to help with dementia if it happens to somebody, there are others which, if the house is not designed with them at the outset, they're very, very difficult to retrofit. For instance, level access. So the standard stepped entrance is one that we've designed for forever. Basically, it's easier to it's slightly easier to detail. It's just the default. Now building regs require a level threshold at the front of a home, but only one, the principal entrance, according to building regulations, is where that step-free access needs to be, and the back door doesn't need to have that that level access. And yet that detail is fairly standard now, and it's no more costly to implement. So at best, to resolve this problem of the one step, you have the picture on the left, and at worst, the one on the right. And it, you know, it's not only really unattractive, it's quite expensive. It probably gets thrown away when that house then moves to a new tenant, and it's quite stigmatizing too, especially when you get that kind of a visible entrance. So a really kind of key issue to look at here is kind of the cost of falls on the level. So falls on the level, so tripping on the level is defined as changes less than 300 millimeters, so like a foot basically. So that's one step, and that's the third most common hazard in homes in England, and it costs the NHS £100 million per annum. And by ensuring that those steps are kind of eliminated at all doors to the home, it doesn't cost any more, but you can design out that risk completely in new build homes and save a huge amount of money. So other reasons why homes should be designed differently at the outset. I've covered the first one, but the second, that path to diagnosis can be lengthy. A lot of you probably know that it can take a long time to even visit the doctor in the first place to say that you've got concerns. Sometimes that never happens, and then after that there's a long process of kind of diagnosis and referral. So during that time, your home could be more difficult to live in, affecting your quality of life. And if the home has some of these criteria, it's just a little bit easier to get over that period. Also, these changes that we're suggesting help people have a more active life, to get out in their community more. All these things reduce that sense of isolation and help delay the onset of dementia, so they can actually alleviate some of the symptoms. And we've recently found that some of the changes that we're suggesting can help people with other conditions such as autism or other learning disabilities, and they just help everyone, because level access, no one's going to complain about that. It's just so much easier to move things in and out of the house when you have that. So the task force has developed this list of criteria. They're on the left, and I'll go through them one by one. And that the aim of them is to help people to remain living happily and healthily in their own home for as long as possible. It's been developed from a literature review of key documents, some of which you might recognise on the right, and in consultation with those key partners from our West Yorkshire Housing Partnership. So I'm just going to go through them. The first one is a front door that's easy to find day or night, and that's sort of where we took a cue from extra care design and older people's housing, where the layout and the design helps people navigate where they live, and the front door is always distinct from the others. We don't want people afraid to leave their home for fear of not being able to find their way back, or if people get lost once, they're less likely to leave the house again. So it's about maintaining independence, exercise, and experience of the outdoors, which are all really good for people who have this condition. And this could be achieved in a number of ways. It could be achieved by having different coloured front doors, or cheaper options that we've looked at, which I'll show to you later, are just distinctive coloured number plaques outside the home, or wall planters, or just by the planting in the garden, or designing the house completely differently. But there are different ways of doing that, and we're not dictating what they should be. It just needs to look different from the others. The second one I touched on there, step-free access to all external doors, and that is because of that, so falls more common for people with dementia. It's an easy win for new builds. It's not so easy for existing homes, so we're looking at to explore what's possible with our housing partners at the moment to refit a beautiful or not an ugly level threshold. And I've seen a few attempts, so yeah, if you've got one, I'd be really interested to see it. The third one, which you might be aware of, is that some internal surfaces can cause confusion for people with dementia. The condition changes perception, so bold patterns like stripes and zigzags can be perceived as moving objects, and highly contrasting floor tones or even different coloured doormats can look like holes or steps. So all of that needs to be avoided, and it's not always the case that those are laid out by the housing developer, but where they are, it's a good idea to kind of avoid flooring like those images shown at the bottom and on the right. And the image on the top left is taken from our guidance and shows the kind of we call it the LRV is a light reflectance value, and it's a difference in tone. So a high light reflectance value is white and low is black, and we need a difference of at least 30 between floor and wall, and we need the difference between different floor colorings to be as minimal as possible. The fourth one is something that is very hard to design in. I don't think it could be done, it couldn't be retrofitted, but if you can see the bathroom door from the bedroom door in the middle of the night, you're more likely to get there without kind of having any accidents, and that just helps kind of retain independence and dignity. It's something when you awake in the night, more confusion is there, and you know that's a sort of vulnerable time. So it just helps that keep that independence if you can see the bedroom door, the bathroom door from the bedroom door. So very simple and cost-free. The fifth one is about bathroom door locks. I think that most new builds have this kind of lock where you can get in from the outside, so you can put a coin and then in that slot and turn it and get somebody out. Again, this is more of a problem for existing homes, and so we're suggesting to our housing partners that when there's a change of tenancy or where other work's going on, which is quickly replace that bathroom door lock, because it could save someone's life, and it's just very low cost. A good level of natural light in all habitable rooms. We're sort of moving to criteria that are slightly more difficult to implement and quantify, but they are so important that we had to have them in. So artificial light is not as good as daylight for reading, for working, and more natural light makes that chance of falling less. It improves general well-being, as well as helping people to kind of recognize that difference between day and night. So we've tried to quantify this as much as possible without having it too much of a technical detail. But what we've said is that kind of that artificial light shouldn't be needed for working or reading most of the time. That's kind of how we've quantified it. A view of nature is another one that could potentially be subjective, but we're saying that the view from the window should include plants and trees, and could be kind of enhanced by bird feeders or something like that. If there's not so much option available, we've included lots of photographs in the guidance so that it can be seen what we mean by a view of nature. Typically not just one patch of grass or an enclosed yard with no plants at all, and it's something that can be relatively easily changed. And that's because there's evidence that the connection with natural environment stimulates memory, and it can actually slow down the progress of symptoms of dementia, so it makes a really big difference. The number 8 is access to an outdoor space that's easy to navigate, and that's about applying those rules about tonal contrast to outdoor paving. When I was trying to find pictures to illustrate this, I was looking for photographs. I couldn't find any, and since then, as I've been walking around the place, I've seen quite a few quite bad examples of where outdoor paving has really strong contrast. So it does exist out there, and also I guess avoiding steps if possible, just making that outdoor environment really easy to navigate and more safe, and that's because that outdoor activity helps the brain to process and coordinate, and vitamin D is really important for the body from that exposure to natural light. Number 9 is something that's not sort of contained within the home itself, but is so important. People with dementia are less likely to drive, and so having amenities close by is really important for their independence and for promoting that activity. And living well with dementia is as much about companionship, community and activity as it is about physical things within the home. So we've tried to quantify that here with further detail about sort of amenities and other homes within 1 kilometre. So we've set a range of facilities, but with our housing partners, we're just kind of trying to help them quantify what that means. And finally, an active dementia champion within the housing organisation. So I'm going to talk more about the champions later, but their role is to promote that awareness across the organisation and to improve the experience of those living with or awaiting a diagnosis of dementia in their workforce as well as with their residents. So I'm happy to say it's Dementia Week, isn't it? We've started to see the fruits of our labours now. There are 2 schemes. Went to see this one in Leeds here, and there's a little bit about it on social media this week to celebrate. There are this is our new build scheme, the first one that we've been able to get out to and photograph, which just shows some of the criteria being implemented. The number plaques, they're all different colours across the different houses in the development. They've got that bathroom door lock on. They've got a lovely level threshold at the back with lots of light and nature outside. And they've even, I mean, these homes are actually built to what used to be called lifetime homes, which you might be aware of. It's now M42 in the building regulations, and that includes things like this socket point at the bottom of the stairs, so that if a stair lift is needed, it's really quite easy to install. So these are really great homes by our Leeds City Council partner. And this is a refurbishment example. The before picture is on the left and the after is on the right. So you can see it's quite subtle, but quite interesting. So you would know that, and these aren't homes for people with dementia. These are general needs homes. So these are all homes for everyday people. So all the new homes that our housing partners are building are built to this. So that means that, you know, people who living them don't necessarily have dementia, but they might develop it later. So we're ready. That's the idea. And on the left, we've got, you know, all the floors look the same. There's nothing by the outside of the front door, or there's no colour on the front door to show that yours is different to anyone else's. There's also a dark doormat there. And what we've done is the Connect Housing Association worked with the tenants to choose colours and number plaques by the front doors, just to make sure that kind of it's a bit more distinctive without being garish or looking kind of institutional in any way. So we're really pleased. Just to talk a little bit about kind of our other work that our champions are doing, dementia-friendly policies is our next step, and we held this workshop in January to identify areas where better joined-up working between health and housing colleagues could help to improve services for people living with dementia. And that we had 5 people with lived experience. We're very lucky to have them from an organisation called Deep and Engage Leeds to talk to us about what they thought was missing. And these are the key themes that came out of that workshop. Dementia awareness and training, people felt that was lacking. Signposting and access, they felt the information was out there, but they didn't know where to start looking for it. Communication about dementia awareness was really important, and also recording and sharing information, not asking for information more than once, was really key, because people were fed up of giving the same information over and over. Moving home was really difficult for people with dementia, navigating all the paperwork and the kind of trauma that kind of goes with that was really difficult. In fact, you know, lots of people saying that they wouldn't have been able to do it without a considerable amount of help. And of course, not forgetting the support for carers, which is really important, because they have a hard time. Now, our dementia champions, just focusing on them now, they are there to kind of inspire action on social housing. And this is photos from a visit we did last month to the Knoll Park House Dementia Daycare Centre and Centre of Excellence, which is in Kirklees. This, if you haven't heard about it, it has just, I think it's just launched last week, a sort of soft opening before that, but they launched it last week, so you might have heard about it in the press. It's got this, on the bottom left, you can see the example, they call it a bungalow, so it's examples of the sorts of design that really make a difference to people with dementia, and they're all our champions there having a look inside about all the special features. And it's got this great garden. So really with these champions, they don't have a massive amount of time to devote to this piece of work, but they're, by sharing with each other and making the time to visit places like this and share what they've done, they're making a real difference. So I mean, the one thing that has made a really big impact is that they've encouraged all their staff and some of their contacts and residents too to become dementia friends, which is the first step really to having that dementia awareness. And it's better than nothing if you can only do the dementia friends training. It's just 10 minutes of your time and it can make a really big difference. Our next steps are to input into the West Yorkshire ICB Dementia Strategy, which is being written now by the Alzheimer's Society. One of the things that came out of the workshop was better training and awareness for housing staff. So we're going to run some of that in the autumn. We're going to continue to embed those housing ready design criteria. They're, sorry, I should say dementia ready housing criteria. Because it's just the start of that journey, and explore maybe the accreditation for private homes of for sort of dementia friendly badge for private housing, and also to develop a dementia friendly housing service guide to kind of do what we've done with the criteria for stock for policies as well. So they're the sort of next steps for us. And if you want to have a look at the housing criteria document or the work of the task force, you can do that at that link, or you can just put West Yorkshire Dementia Ready Housing Task Force and you'll find that. So that's it from me. I was a bit faster than I expected there, Fiona. I expected that to be quite slow, but I do have I can answer any questions, or I can go back to anything if you need any more detail.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Helen. I'm always impressed when I hear anything from West Yorkshire in terms of their dementia ready housing. It really shows you what can be done if you kind of focus the mind. And I think that really highlights that priority that we talked about very first thing this morning about how do you maintain independence, and something like those design criteria ticks an awful lot of boxes, doesn't it? And really interesting to hear your key themes coming out of your recent workshop about that kind of information, advice and guidance is something we're definitely having a look for at our programme. And people are saying, you know, you only want information when you hit crisis, and that's the time when perhaps you can't find it, and then housing, health and care don't talk to each other. So yeah, definitely something that's on our radar.
Yeah.
We're hopefully going to have some time for questions at the end with the 4 panel members, but if there is anything anyone wants to pose to Helen now before we move on, please feel free. We've got a couple of comments in the chat, Helen, saying
yeah,
really
lovely,
interesting.
thank you.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. It does show what's possible when we kind of put our minds together. Okay.
Yeah, I think the will was there, you know, it was, yes. Yeah, it was just a bit of commitment, not a lot of commitment, because we knew we couldn't ask for a massive amount of resource from people, or you know, we've done this so far without any funding. So we deliberately pitched it so that it would be not a huge ask, but have a big impact. So hopefully it will do that.
Thank you. And I suppose just one quick question from me. Sometimes what we hear from providers and developers is some of these design standards can add cost in, and then who's going to pay for the cost? Did you come across that? Are there any that's particularly costly, Helen?
Yeah, I think if they're built in at design stage, the cost is negligible. I think there are some, like the level threshold, which might not be possible on certain sites if you already have a sloping site, which sometimes some of the sites that social housing providers end up with are quite difficult. So there are some like that where that level threshold might not be suitable, but most of them are just things that have like very negligible cost or nil cost. It's just if you don't put them in at the outset, they are very costly to put in later. Like the level threshold, it's very hard to fit a good level threshold later, and in a way that doesn't look institutional. So yeah, really quite negligible cost. There are some others, like where the home is. Not every developer has a massive amount of choice about where to put their sites, and so in that case, we would suggest to the housing partner that they maybe look at lettings policy to make sure that people who are a bit older or are known to have dementia are, that the lettings are based in places where amenities are close to the home.
And also, has this been adopted by planning colleagues as well, Helen, in each local authority, or was that not necessary?
Yeah, we have started to work, because that's all part of getting to the private sector, because we've just worked with our social housing providers at the moment. So yeah, we've done a few things actually to try to get to the private sector. We've talked to all 5 of our planning authorities in West Yorkshire who've agreed to as planning policy develops, to implement it in the next round of their local plan, or through design codes is another way of doing that, or supplementary planning documents. But we've also been talking to private developers, trying to kind of get them interested in the idea. We've had a little bit of success. We've written to government. We've had a response from Matthew Pennycook, so we are on people's radar. We also had a little bit of impact on the housing, the older people's housing task force that was run by MHCLG. Oh no, it wasn't. It was the DHSC, I think, that ran the older people's housing task force, and so you can see our influence in that document too. So we're hoping to push it further than just social housing providers, who they have a big impact, but not, that's not all housing.
Fantastic. Thank you, Helen. And you're staying with us for the whole session.
Yeah, I can do. Yeah,
any
thanks.
questions?
Love to.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much indeed. That was a really interesting start of the conversation. Thank you. So if we can move on to our next speaker, we've got Phil from North Tyneside Age UK, who's going to take us through a particular scheme that they've got within North Tyneside. Phil, can I hand over to you to introduce yourself and just take us through your slides?
Thank you very much. I'll have to kick off with a small apology, actually, because the the links that I've had on to a couple of videos actually aren't working, so I do apologise. I will put them into the chat as we go through. So my name's Philip Curran. At Age UK Housing as the head of housing, and today it's just we have got a scheme that's dementia, that's specifically built for those with dementia, and it's really good to hear Helen talk about some of the issues there that we've actually implemented. So when you were going through that, Helen, I was over the moon with some of the areas that were covered, so that was great.
Thank you.
I think nationally, Age UK, there was a video there. Again, I'll put it in. It's about let's change how we age and how we adapt our housing for the future. And as I go through this presentation today, and everyone will know that we've got a huge issue with older people and dementia, and how do we equip ourselves to make sure we don't end up with a catastrophic issue. So the missions and values for us are pretty vanilla, really, and it's about the communities and people in later life, and how we serve everybody for later life, and it's about that caring and empowering people. All again, what Helen's discussed there. And we've set quite a big strategy over the years, and we're going to continue to do that for the next 5-year strategy. But I suppose you probably wonder about why housing in Age UK. Well, housing is obviously a critical part of older people's future, and at Age UK in North Tyneside, we're linking in all of our charitable objectives of supporting people through various areas of income, but also we've got a care arm there that delivers a significant amount of care within North Tyneside and Newcastle, and linking that all to the housing strategy and how we continue to deliver more affordable housing for older people. And we recently carried out a survey in North Tyneside with older people about where the problems lie, and to be honest, it's very similar to the national picture. which I'll go through in a second. And older people and people with dementia are struggling to find accommodation that's suitable, or even planning for the future as well. How do we plan for the future to ensure that the accommodation that we're in is fit for purpose, but also how do we find accommodation that's suitable to our needs? What Helen's again discussed. So that was a huge challenge, and I don't think it's a challenge that's just come out. It's a challenge that's been there for some time now. And the population's aging. Again, I'll not need to tell everybody here, but it's just going to increase year on year. Again, the dementia in North Tyneside specifically has gone up by 50% or so over the last few years. I think there's a lot of the 4 million homes are non-decent in England, and half of those are lived in people who are over 55. It's a big issue, and I think the national picture paints a bleak picture of what we're getting into in the next few years. So based on all of that, we were got together with a few different organizations, and we wanted to create something that was suitable for the needs, and dementia was obviously a huge part of that. So Northumberland Estates and various organizations and research that went through, how do we develop something that's completely supports people with dementia, onset dementia, and we built a scheme in Backworth in North Tyneside, and it has 28 apartments which are all self-contained. There's 24-hour care and support on site as well, so that people is maintaining their independence but have that security, and that can be completely from 2 visits a day to 4 visits a day. And it's about how do we create better outcomes for people with dementia, because there was never a lot of opportunity for where people could go, whether that might be a care home, straight into a care home. So it's about completely maintaining that independence, creating that environment and that living space that has so much attention to detail. With the scheme at Havelock Place, all of the furniture is different, all of the colours of the walls, the corridors, the gardens. There's a very good access to the gardens, and they're never-ending gardens, so people can walk around gardens, and they never end until they're ready to come in with the care team. So them subtle modifications have a really big impact. The lighting, again, what Helen talked about, there's so much natural light coming into the building, but also where natural light couldn't be achieved, it's mimicked in terms of the design, and it's all about trying to keep people out of hospital as well, and ensuring that the falls, we're trying to minimize the falls. So we just introduced a new technology now within the scheme, which is going to create a little bit more independence, and that's falls opening doors on an evening between certain hours of the day where we can detect that, and we can get services in early. And activities for older people, we found that really, really important about them activities, continually just moving the brain, doing things in the garden, doing games, going out into the community. It all has a huge impact, and that's probably one of the main areas where families come back and say the activities are so good that they're really helping me mum or me dad. We also have with the apartments, we also have two-person apartments. So if a husband and wife and one of them has dementia and one of them doesn't, we don't really want to separate them. So there's a couple of people within that scheme. One has dementia and one hasn't. It's just about keeping them together, and we found that really, really important. There is also 2 bungalows that are on the site as well, and them bungalows are well, one of them's getting used for step down at the moment, but the other one is about, so when people move or people's dementia becomes a little bit more challenging, should we say, then they can move on to the bungalow, because that bungalow is a little bit more, so you have a room and you have an area where you can have your dinner, tea and stuff with everyone else, or communal kitchen. And that's helped greatly because the bungalow is more or less the same as the main house. So the transition of that move isn't so bad. And again, all the nominations that will work really closely with North Tyneside Council on that. I did have a video. I'll put that in the chat, and that basically gives you a full idea of how it was created on the outset. So all of the research from Stirling University, from partners within North Tyneside, how to create something now that's suitable for the future, and we don't have to do them adaptations Helen was talking about. So there's some final comments on there about are we actually failing in a plan for an ageing population? There's still no national plan for types of housing for all the people that live well, and there's a spending review obviously coming up in June there, and we hope that would consider older people's housing long term. And housing for older people, as we discussed, isn't a niche concern, and it's about potentially rethinking that system. The funding's a little bit inconsistent. The commissioning can be complex, and planning policy, it does rarely prioritise age-friendly housing. So hopefully the forthcoming housing strategy will take a lead from the older persons task force, because, as we say, 1 in 5 people are over 65, and that's rising rapidly. And again, I did put this in about, and Helen mentioned it as well, about the private rented sector, and they have a huge role to play as well in ensuring that we'll continue to deliver the best service possible. So that's probably about where we're at the moment. I can put these videos on the chat, but the presentations are available. But I think there's probably a final one there. When we've been getting lots of feedback from families who obviously are in huge distress when they come to us, because probably they're either walking on at night time, not looking after themselves well, and a couple of weeks in, the first couple of weeks is always the worst, because it's that adjustment to a new environment, a new home. But I think it's been open 2 years now, when we've had to move one person out, and that was just a safeguarding issue, unfortunately. But everybody's maintaining a tenancy at the moment, and that's just a real success story. And that's it from me.
Thank you so much, Phil. I know that you said you were going to put the slides in the chat, but can I just ask you just to expand a little bit, Phil, on the actual schemes themselves? So you talked about the furniture being a particular design. I think what really impressed me was the whole colour scheme and the size of the apartments compared to normal as well.
Yeah, well, the site, it is a huge site, and the gardens are enormous, because of them never-ending paths and such like. The corridors are probably double the size of what you would normally get in an extra care scheme, and the colour contrasts are different in every section, and they're all dementia-friendly colour contrasts. But even the furniture, so the furniture around it's all got the stitching and beading in. So if anybody's losing the sight in any way, shape, or form, when they're sitting with the hand, or they're going to sit down with their hands, they can feel the contrast of where they're sitting. The rooms are bigger than you would expect from a normal one. So, but the distances between obviously the toilet and the bedroom are really small. So it helps with that minimizing falls. But the self-contained apartments are just completely about maintaining that independence. So we actually don't have a cafe on site, and that was what was decided right at the beginning, because to maintain that independence, you try and get people in the room so that the staff can help them with meals and such like. Although most every week there's fish and chip days and such like, so there's a time where people do eat together. But majority of the time, out of that 48, out of that 28 apartment, everybody's in the communal area because there's various activities going on. They're watching the TV together, or they're doing all of them things. So it's really impressive on the design. But them designs don't come at a cost. As them designs come at a high cost. But we feel as if that cost really does help. All of the care that's delivered on site as well as part of Age UK. So it's housing and care. And everybody again trained in dementia, so everybody has that level of dementia training to ensure that they're well equipped to work within the scheme.
Fantastic, thanks, Phil. And I suppose you also mentioned that we don't necessarily plan for these types of schemes. And interestingly, when you look at the baseline that we've done as the housing programme, if you look at the demand, we've talked about the number of people getting older, the number of people that may well end up with dementia. When we look at the numbers, we've only got 50% of that demand in current plans across the region. So if you've got any thoughts for us, Phil, on nuggets about, what do we need to be doing now to make sure that we can respond to that demand from a housing perspective?
It's a really difficult one. And I think that's when on the final comments they're talking about how do we change that view. And I think we've worked really hard with North Tyneside Council to try and come up with different solutions. As a housing provider, I suppose you're always worried about the commissioning aspect as well, and how long that'll go on for. But I think there's lots of housing providers now are really investing in this area, and see it as a huge challenge. So whilst I don't necessarily have the answer, if I had the answer, it would be great, wouldn't it? But I think that partnership and collaboration going forward's just so critical to the housing provider, the local authority, and Homes England to really make that happen.
And it's almost that call to action, isn't it? So we're all individually in our own organisations responding to or facing the same problems. It's when we come together as a collective that we're really starting to make some headway into that.
Yeah.
Sati, did you want to come in on the back of that particular question?
Yeah, I think it was just obviously agreeing with everything that's already been said, and thanks, Phil, for that. I think, you've made the point about that collaboration, that partnership, and how it's key for local authorities and Homes England and obviously housing providers, but the combined authority. And again, as most of you might know on this call, and I'll always sort of fly the flag for housing partnerships. We've got the North East Housing Partnership across sort of the North East footprint, and it's definitely something on their radar. Going back to your point there, Phil, that there is this appetite across housing providers, and they're looking at this pipeline, as many are, because I know that's happening across West Yorkshire as well, and South Yorkshire, and all the other sort of housing partnerships. And it's about that, trying to get this message into that as well. And like I said, it is very much on that radar, because, I've been very, very closely involved in the North East Housing Partnership. We provide a secretariat for that. And that's exactly, there's been some outside discussions around sort of development and what they need to do more outside of what the current regime is, and supported housing and complex care always keeps coming back onto that agenda. So it's very much on that radar. So as you've already sort of mentioned, it's just about that collaboration, having those conversations with the local authorities, having those conversations with the combined authority, and just keep sort of banging that drum, so to speak. But it's very much on that housing providers agendas. It very much is, and wider as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Phil on that particular scheme? Hopefully, Phil, you're around until the end of the session as well, if we have that time to do the Q&A. Thank you so much. Okay, Helen.
Yeah, so where is it, Phil? Can we go and have a look, or or at least know more about it?
Yeah, so I'll put, like I say, I'll put the videos in the chat.
Yeah, thank you.
They are really good, and I'll supply you with the presentation. It's in Backworth and North Tyneside, so right on the border of Newcastle and North Tyneside.
Mm-hmm. It looks
but you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome to come up and have a look around. We're welcome.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
So open for visitors, Phil.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you. So thank you very much to Helen and Phil. I think that sets the scene very nicely about that kind of built environment. Sorry, can I just ask if we can try and keep muted? Thank you. I think now what's going to be really helpful for us is to now start and look at the individual in the middle of that. So if I can just introduce Ruth, who's going to take us through some support that's available for carers. Thanks, Ruth.
Thanks, Fiona. Really pleased to be here, and I'm just going to share my screen. Just bear with. Talk amongst yourself for a minute, sorry.
It's always the technology that throws us, isn't it?
There we go. There we go. Slideshow from the beginning. Great. Okay, can you all see that?
Perfect, Ruth. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you for asking me to talk to you today. I'm really pleased to be here because housing is a particular interest of mine. I'm the chair of the board at Together in Dementia Every Day, which I'll say a little bit more about it. And I used to be in the Department of Health, and I was the Older People's Lead for Dignity in Dementia back in the old days when we were developing a dementia strategy. I'm also Vice Chair of Liverpool Dementia Action Alliance, and I'm a board member for Wales and West Housing Association, member of the Housing and Dementia Working Group, and in fact I'm chairing a webinar for them, one of the happy hour sessions on the 22nd of May, which is about communities and developing dementia inclusive communities and community development for people with dementia. And I've co-edited a book which I'm brazenly going to promote because it's really good. I co-edited it with Polly Kaiser, and it's about life story work with people with dementia. Really important to help people stay engaged and to keep that sense of identity. So Tide is a Liverpool-based charity, but we have a UK-wide reach and we operate across the UK. And in fact, we have members internationally, Canada, Australia, Finland, I think, as well. So anybody with an interest in dementia and family carers can subscribe. It's free. You'll get a monthly newsletter and information about opportunities to get involved. And I would urge you to encourage current and former carers of people with dementia to sign up with us. Particularly, we have an involvement in research. Funding for the charity sector is horrendous at the moment, particularly for small charities that don't have the big fundraising and marketing departments. And one of the areas where we can get funding is research. We have a good track record of involving carers as experts, and we are funded as a strategic co-production partner in the SPIN Dementia Network, which is focusing on prevention and early intervention. So just briefly what we do. We run a free involvement network for carers and former carers of people living with dementia. And I will stress former carers because we're one of the few charities that welcome former carers without them having to sign up to take on a formal role as a volunteer. And we know that when the person with dementia dies, everything stops and carers become former carers and they feel very alone. So we welcome them, not least because they now have the headspace and the time and the energy to make sense of their caring experience. And many of them want to use that experience to support and help other carers. So we invest in our carers through our development programme, aiming to give them knowledge, skills and confidence. And I'll say a bit more about that later. We work with carers as equal partners because we want to influence decision makers and to change policy, practice and research. And we enable carers to get involved in research as expert advisors, as I mentioned. We do have training products for health, social care and housing staff. For example, life story work and My Home Matters, which I'm going to focus on later. And our carer members help to design that training and they co-deliver it with us, co-produce our resources. So this is our Carers Development Programme. It's a rolling programme of online workshops on topics that carers tell us are important. We can do face-to-face workshops if we have the funding to do it, and we're doing some in Merseyside at the moment, thanks to an Awards for All grant. Excuse me. So we co-deliver with carers and we go further than just offering information and signposting. So you'll find that Alzheimer's Society, Dementia UK, Dementia Carers Count, the big charities do have information on their website and they do offer some workshops around particular topics. But what they don't do is go further in terms of practical tips and information for individual carers. So we bring carers together and give them the opportunity to talk about their own situation and give them tips and techniques to help them prepare for what or understand whatever the topic is. So getting your point across. Professionals take this in their stride. It's very daunting for carers if they've got to go to a care review or they've got to make that phone call to ask for help. So we help them to prepare for that. You can't pour from an empty cup, looking after your own health and well-being. Living grief and bereavement. Now, this is a topic that is really important for carers of people with dementia. Professionals tend to talk about anticipatory grief, but carers say, no, it's here and now, it's real. So we help them to understand and deal with those emotions and to realise that they're not alone in feeling those emotions. Carers who do that workshop find it really helpful. We do one around communication and dementia and purposeful activities. And we've added those two recently because that's what carers have said they want. And we're conscious that those do overlap a little bit with what other charities offer. But actually, that doesn't matter too much. As long as we're not doing exactly what everybody else is doing, that's fine. It gives people a choice, and people will go to other charities and come to us as well. It gives people a menu. And as I say, when funded, we can run in-person workshops. I just want to mention this because this is an example of a topic that was suggested by carers in various online groups. We run a coffee morning. We run a group for carers of younger people with dementia. Really important to remember, something like 75,000 people in the UK under the age of 65 with a diagnosis of dementia. And there's not much out there for them, so we run an online group for them. We run a group for former carers and we run a group for male carers. So through those discussions, this topic came up, that varied experience of carers when the person they're looking after goes into a care home. Some care homes are excellent, absolutely welcome and embrace carers as equal partners, give them the opportunity to get as involved as they want to with the person that they used to look after. But for others, it's completely different. And there's a quote in our report that says, I was a carer for my mum 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 10 years. Overnight, I became a visitor. And that's what it's like for many people. So we did a survey, we ran a focus group, carers helped us design it all, and the findings confirm that there is wide variation in practice. But we know that good shared care exists, so we know it's possible. We're ready to launch the report. We're having a webinar on the 10th of June, and I'll put that link in the chat at the end. And our recommendations include requests to regulators, CQC in England, to include shared care in their inspection regimes. Otherwise, the care homes that need to change won't take the issue seriously. And we will, in fact, we're in the process now of doing it, producing best practice guidelines on how to do good shared care. And we'll also develop a training module for our carers development programme to help carers manage that really important transition. This is mainly what I'm here to talk about. Beyond the Front Door was a Department of Health funded project, part of their post-diagnostic support programme. And what we tried to do is explore the meaning of home for people with dementia and carers. And the project confirmed that it is a significant topic that people rarely get the chance to discuss. And in fact, people with dementia said, this is great, we've never had the chance to talk about this before, it's really important. So what came out of that is that home is a combination of people, relationships and memories, place, locality and neighbourhood. It's about significant objects and furnishings that make us feel at home. And it's about safe and comfortable and familiar spaces. And from that, we made some recommendations for the housing sector on information provided about options, because as we've heard from previous speakers, information about what's out there is there, but it's not always easy to access. It's also about information about the particular scheme that you might be moving into, or the housing provider. You might be moving into general housing, or you might be going into sheltered accommodation. It's about the information and how that application process is managed and people are supported through it. And that's for housing staff, but it's also for people like OTs and social workers who may be advising people about moving home. And there are issues, of course, for workforce knowledge and skills. So that's where My Home Matters began. And we were able to get an Awards for All grant. And what we did was run a series of workshops and focus groups to explore that idea of home further and the transition to new homes, whether that was moving to live with your family, moving to buying a new house, or moving into social housing, into special schemes, or whatever it is, that transition. And that led to our booklet called My Home Matters. We tested it out with people with dementia and carers. We ran a pilot training session for professionals on the importance of home and how to support people better through those transitions. And we found that our conclusions fitted in well with other research about transitions in later life. Now, this is Penny. I'm just showing her photo. She's not here today, but she actually did all the work around the project. So fair dues, credit where credit is due. She is a tied associate and she project managed My Home Matters. So the booklet, it recognises that moving is a significant life event. We called it a booklet. I'm not entirely happy with that, but we couldn't think of a better title, really. But anyway, it recognises that moving is a significant life event. And that move might be planned. You might be thinking ahead, planning for when your needs change. It might be driven by necessity. Often these things happen in a crisis, unfortunately. It might be done under pressure because your family is saying, come on, it's time for a move. Or it might happen after that crisis. So the booklet helps people plan ahead for future moves by considering what matters to them, where they are now in terms of home, and creating that sort of personal record that they can keep, they can add to, they can share with their family or friends if they wish to do that, so that they are aware of what matters to them, and they can share it with an OT or a social worker or community nurse or whoever who might be involved in advising them and helping them to think about moving. It's a tool that you can use individually, or you could use it in groups for reminiscence. And it's in 3 parts: preparing for a move, facing up to a move, and we use that term following advice from people who helped us develop the resource, because it is about facing up. You know, moving house is a major traumatic event for all of us. So it's about facing up to it and dealing with it. And it includes some resources and templates to help people. So it's a very busy slide, but it just gives you an example of the page, basically. So what makes a place home for me? So we start with this page to help you think about what home means to you. So ponder about the attachments and feelings that you have when you think about home. We put a lot of effort into creating a home often. Sometimes, though, that home isn't the best place for us. It may not feel safe for all sorts of reasons. Or it may have changed because your partner's died or gone into a care home, or you may be less mobile. So it's about thinking about where you are now, and we give people some prompts. So to think about your favourite room, the things in your home that you're attached to, objects and memories and people, particular events that you associate with your home, things you've done here, maybe that big party for your 50th birthday, or maybe you had a reception here after your daughter got married, or maybe you just moved here when you got married and it's been your home forever ever since. Things you've made here. So it might be that you've actually made things in the home, or it might be the decor and the wallpaper and the colour schemes. What you've done to make the place feel like home. Have you got ducks on the wall and there's nothing wrong with that? Or have you got lots of photographs around? Have you got lots of cushions that you like, furniture? Autonomy, you expect to make decisions in your own home. Can you do that? What would you want? How would you want that to be if you had to move? Having a view. We've heard about the importance of being able to look out. Well, is that view important to you? If you had to move, would you want something similar? Or don't you have a view? Or you're looking onto a brick wall and you really, really want to have a garden? Warmth, heating, good light so that you can see well enough. So that's just one bit of the booklet to give you an idea of what it's about and the content. So in terms of staff, it's clear that this is a significant topic for people with dementia and carers. It's not just a nice add-on. And if we really take this on board, then it enables choice and control to enable people to have some autonomy and some control over thinking about where they want to move and what's important to them. And that in turn supports their self-esteem, their functioning and their resilience. So it's really important that we create and take opportunities to talk about home and housing options. And when we did this piece of work, we we spoke to quite a lot of people, and we included some occupational therapists from the Memory Assessment Service and the Community Mental Health team in the local mental health trust. And we made the point with them, and they accepted it, that housing options should be part of the post-diagnostic support programme that they run. So they talk about financial issues, they talk about making a will, they talk about minor adaptations in the home, but really thinking about the future and housing options was not part of that programme, and they agreed that they would try and incorporate that into their post-diagnostic support sessions. We recognise as well that professions are often under pressure to take the fastest and most expedient option, and significantly that's when people go into a hospital after a crisis and the pressure is on to move them out, and people with dementia are still moving straight from hospital into care homes without ever seeing their home again, and that is just not acceptable. So helping people prepare for moves is as important as supporting them through those transitions. So we do have a training package, and it provides opportunities for understanding the meaning of home as distinct from a place where you live, and why is it significant, exploring the effect of transitions on people with dementia and carers, and it helps meet requirements in terms of the Care Act and NICE guidelines, helps you reflect on your own practice. And we've included some top tips for supporting people through transitions. It's about practice development for professionals across health and social care and housing, of course. The booklet can be downloaded. It's on the website, and again, I'll put the link in the chat. You can download the whole thing. It's quite long, but we've deliberately, because that's what people with dementia and carers told us, we've done it in sections so you can download the bit that you want to work on and save it, and then you can go to another bit. You don't have to do the whole workbook, of course, but you can dip in and out. So it is downloadable, and you can fill it in as a hard copy, or you can do it online, do it as an electronic document. So I thought I'd conclude with a few things to think about. And that is the role of the housing sector in providing homes, not just accommodation. And I'm really pleased that Wales and West Housing talk about homes, not housing, not accommodation. I'm sure that applies to lots of other organisations as well, but it's so important. So does the housing sector have a seat at the table for planning and service design? Clearly, there's a lot of collaboration going on in your region, and we've heard about West Yorkshire as well. But in terms of those health and social care planning forums, does housing have a seat there? Hopefully you do. Think about what does home mean to you. When we were doing this project, it really made us think about what matters, what makes home, and what's most important. Is it the people that you live with? Is it people around you in your neighbourhood? Is it the actual house and the memories that you have there? Is it things in the house that you've collected over the years? So what does home mean to you? Because that will give you an insight into what it might mean for people with dementia and their carers. And most importantly, I think, because this is really an issue for the housing sector, what information and support do you offer to people with dementia faced with or planning a move? So how do you advise them? What information can you offer them? And if you are actually at the point of offering somebody a tenancy or a place in a scheme, you know, how do you help them through that transition? What information do you give them? You know, we did some focus groups in sheltered housing, and a couple of people said that it was really hard when we moved in because we didn't know what to expect. You know, what happens here? What do you do in a communal? You know, they might not have lived in that sort of communal accommodation before. So those sorts of things, introducing new tenants to other people in the scheme, you know, all those things are important, but not necessarily things that we do very well. So I leave you with some challenges. That's us. I'm going to put, when I finish the slide, I'll put those details in the chat, and those are my contact details. Please feel free to contact me, and thanks for involving me.
Thank you so much, Ruth. A really, really different perspective, I think, to our first two speakers, but really striking. And I think the one that really hit me this morning was that quote from your report about, you know, I was a carer for 24/7, and then now all of a sudden I'm a visitor. Really quite hard hitting, that, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Mm.
And what we can do with that, if that's all right with you, we'll make sure that our networks are aware of that report, that kind of making shared care a reality. And we've got commissioning networks within adult social care, so we can share the fact that that's coming out, Ruth, if that's all right. So that My Home Matters is there as a resource that's available. Thank you so much for that. And I like the Carers Development Programme, and especially that kind of toolbox for carers. And again, looking after your own health and well-being when you're a carer, sometimes you don't necessarily think about that either, do you? You're just kind of responding to your individual loved one's needs, and you don't think about your own health and well-being.
That's right, and compounded by the fact that you can become quite isolated because friends fall away, you know, neighbours maybe don't know how to respond, so you can become quite isolated, particularly as people's dementia advances, because then they need you more than ever. So finding your own space and your own time is really really important. And we run a module, which I didn't put up on the screen, about helping carers prepare for a carers assessment, because that's their opportunity to actually say what would help them to carry on doing what they're doing, what would help their health and well-being. And again, we give people tips and techniques to prepare, and making bullet points. Well, what's the bottom line? What do you really want to get out of this? Helping people manage their emotions, because if you get angry, and understandably carers are very angry often, but if you get angry, it doesn't always get you where you want to be. So how do you deal with that? So yeah, we get great feedback from our carers development programme. So please, my final word would be, please encourage carers and former carers to join us, because the more that are with us, the stronger our voices, and it gives them access to resources and information and support. And carers are amazing at supporting each other. The peer support groups that we run, just incredible. Even carers in the direst circumstances can still offer encouragement and support to other carers, and that's amazing.
Brilliant, thank you. So some fantastic resources that are available for people to have a look at and use within your own organisations, but also please take up the challenge from Ruth about making sure that your organisation, or perhaps yourself individually, can connect into some of those networks that are available. Thank you, Ruth. If we just move on to our final speaker, again, what I thought was really insightful, Ruth, when you mentioned that kind of importance of home as well. So Lindsay's going to join us and talk through some work that she's leading within Sunderland within that arena. Thanks, Lindsay.
Thanks, Fiona. I will just share my screen, get this presentation up. Okay. Is that all there, Fiona? Fabulous, thank you. So first of all, massive thank you to Fiona for inviting us to chat through what we've been doing here at Sunderland. My presentation's got a little bit of a slant towards technology, which is one of my passions, and that kind of started a few years ago with Fiona. So thank you very much for kickstarting us on that journey. So this morning I'm going to talk about designing dementia-friendly living spaces and adopting principles. So it's got, like I say, a bit of a slant on technology, looking at it from an occupational therapy point of view, which is my trade, and some of the services and teams that we work with here in Sunderland. So I kind of wanted to look back to the 80s and 90s and where were we and what were we doing in terms of dementia care. And some of the core ideas that influenced the design for dementia care was around how we could do that within care homes. So person-centered care was about inspiring the work, was from the inspired work of psychologists in the 80s, which emphasised maintaining personhood despite that cognitive decline. So environments within care homes began to be designed to support that autonomy, dignity and identity. Orientation, so the use of visual cues, which obviously we've mentioned earlier on in earlier presentations, so colour contrasting and visual prompts as to which room is which, like bathrooms. Then we thought about safe and simulating outdoor spaces, so gardens and courtyards were very integral with care home design in the 80s and 90s, and that was around focusing on physical activity and sensory stimulation. Lighting and sensory design, so awareness of how lighting affects mood and cognition started to emerge, avoiding glares, shadows and poor lighting, which could cause misperceptions or anxiety. And then was the start of kind of nostalgia and reminiscence therapy, so incorporating decor and furniture and design elements that evoke the past decades, especially like in the 40s to the 60s. So then if we move on to the 2000s and we think about the idea of dementia friendly, that expanded beyond those care facilities to include homes, neighbourhoods and public spaces. So there was a stronger push for independence, dignity and safety, a shift from caring for to living with dementia, and independence, helping people live as independently as possible for as long as possible, emphasis on living well with dementia. So around the home design was important in terms of inclusive design. So homes that are created to support both people with dementia and the broader population. Homes began to include features like level flooring, contrasting colour, which we've just mentioned, schemes for depth perception, simplified technology with controls. So with the image, one of the images on there is around your kind of telecare response. The environment, so looking at familiarities, tones and colours, flooring, textures, and that was all around looking at reducing that anxiety and confusion. Integration of nature, that continued, so that's looking at that outdoor access and natural light to support with reduction of any agitation, improving sleep and mood. And again, I just mentioned the telecare, but we started to look at that technology enabled care. So then if we look at where we're kind of coming up to now is around kind of 2020 to 2025. So dementia friendly home design checklist. So from an occupational therapy point of view, what would I be looking at? So entrance and hallways, we've talked about how new properties would have that level entry, because obviously if we're going to adapt a property, that can be ugly, as we've mentioned, and it can be quite a significant alteration. So, like I say, level entry with ramp or flush thresholds, bright lighting with no visual clutter, clear signage for directions or room functions, and again, colour contrasting colours on door frames and handles. I've put some examples on there around using those prompts to which room is which, and obviously we've talked about the flooring, which can cause anxiety and may be that somebody perceives that as a hole or a tripping hazard. And then we've been putting some very simple strip lighting in, LED strip lighting, which can really help orientate somebody on the stairs. So if we think about the living room environment, so familiar and comfortable furniture, good contrasts between furniture and the floor, memory boxes or photos. In the kitchen and dining room areas, open shelves or glass cupboard doors to see items. I think earlier about the wardrobe, having that clear visual cue as to what that item is. Things like back to the kitchen in terms of safe appliances, so auto shut off and induction hobs, and then perhaps a dining space with place settings to cue for routines. Bedrooms. Is the bedroom visible from a doorway? The bed visible, sorry, from a doorway to aid orientation? Wardrobe with the transparent doors or photos of the clothing, dimmable night lighting, automatic sensor lights, calm, consistent decor with minimal patterns. Bathroom, high contrast between the walls, the toilets and floors. We can get grab rails in contrasting colours. A level access shower, large clear labels on taps and toiletries. And I refer again to raised beds and level access in outdoor spaces. I put a couple of links on some little videos and a leaflet on there, which is really helpful, but I will post that after, or we can share that after Fiona. Okay, so here I'm kind of moving over to the technology. So I appreciate this morning is around the kind of the focus of dementia and dementia friendly properties, but I think it's really important that we think about the future proof of decent homes, which we've mentioned. So if we think about aging well and how we can best use our home and maintain our home. And like I say, a bit of a lean towards technology on this slide. So if we think about what can we put in from a technology perspective, or what do we have in our homes already? So safety and monitoring and falls detection, so we can have sensors or wearable devices that detect falls or alert caregivers, GPS trackers, smart door sensors, Ring doorbells. They can notify caregivers if doors are opened at unusual hours. Smart things, motion and contact sensors again to alert us if doors are opening and closing. These can also help us look at routines within the home, so smart plugs and timers for lighting and heating to reduce confusion, or as a caregiver, if those are shown an unusual pattern, it might be able to identify us to some change in circumstances in order to look at prevention rather than reaction. So if maybe somebody's at risk of a fall, or is wandering during the night, technology is something that's really helpful for that. And then we've got environmental controls, so we could look at lighting to support sleep-wake cycles, reducing sundowning, smart thermostats, leaks and smoke sensors, and humidity and moisture sensors, so we can manage the home environment. And then you've got technology that can support in terms of community and engagement, so tablets and communication tools, memory aids, smart calendars, or screen showing day, weather and schedule tasks. So I move on to how can the local authority help? So here at Sunderland, we have a smart house which has a range of equipment and alterations and technology, and it's a facility where we can train our workforce in technology and equipment that's available, but where we can test equipment and test technology. And I know the next stage of our smart house is around looking at dementia friendly. So we're going to be working with some colleagues to look at the next stages. And I think Ellie's on the call, so I think Ellie we'll be reaching out to you soon because we'll be looking at the flooring and the textures and stuff. So how can the local authority help? So obviously from an OT perspective, we can look at assessments around equipment, alterations, technology-enabled care, and specialist intervention liaison with our colleagues. We've got telecare services, so we can link up with telecare and link up with our social work and care and support colleagues, as well as our voluntary agencies that we work with in the community. We work really closely with the Home Improvement Agency here at Sunderland, and they oversee our minor alterations and major alterations. One of the areas that we're particularly proud of is our use of discretionary grants. So we can access discretionary grants for home safety and especially dementia care. So it may be that we might want to change some of the kitchen cupboards to have clear panels, or we might want to change some of the flooring or the colouring, and we can access those discretionary grants to support with that. We also use a smart house, and again, we're working with partners around falls prevention. And some of that is around the technology, which I think Philip mentioned earlier, but we're testing some technology, some specialist lighting that may detect no movement or a sudden movement. So again, we'll test that, see how that works. We're going to work with our local voluntary agencies, carers groups to look at co-production moving forward. But I would like to say a big thank you, because we've been really lucky that we've had two OTs that are on that top photo there, Emma and Rebecca, who are community OTs who we've kind of ring fenced to specialise in technology. So if it wasn't for those two, I don't think we'd kind of be where we are together now. So I have noted in the last box at the bottom of that is around our challenges, and connectivity is our biggest challenge now. I think, you know, a lot of us have connectivity in our homes, and as we age and age well, connectivity is something we will expect in our older generation as we get older, but I think we still have an older generation there that doesn't have that connectivity. So that has been a bit of a stumbling block for us, but we are looking at it. So the future in co-production, and I'm kind of touching on everything that we've all said this morning, which is around how can we look at co-producing dementia-friendly living spaces. And for me, it's around working with the people with a lived experience, or people living or caring for those with dementia, health and social care professionals, or OTs, our GPs, our memory clinic staff, and we need those vital insights in order to support the design of our homes. Local authority and housing teams, I appreciate they're all set up in different local authorities, but I think it's really important that we're working with our housing departments, our architects, our contractors, to make sure that any new adaptations or builds are future-proofed, but also have that core design place. Technology, so working with our assistive technology and smart home companies and accredited companies such as the TSA. I've mentioned again the voluntary and community sector, and then also our academic and research partners, which is really important. So what do we want our homes to have to ensure that people living with dementia have healthier, happier, more independent lives, whilst ensuring we have good, decent homes that are future-proofed? So we want safe, warm, good quality homes. Homes should meet the decent home standard and be free from hazards, damp, mould, and be well maintained, which is where I kind of link in with the assistive technology side of things, because I think if we're starting to look at humidity sensors, moisture, heat, then we can look at maintaining those properties better for longer. So accessible and adaptable homes. So homes should be suitable for people of all ages and abilities, and support people to live independent. How can we do this? Accessible properties, connectivity for the future, and to sustain good home and protect our housing stock for the future. We want energy efficient, well insulated homes with lower living costs, reducing carbon emissions and improving health outcomes. Affordable housing, or reasonably priced, ensuring people can live without financial hardship. Connected to communities and smart homes should be located in safe neighbourhoods with easy access to healthcare, shops, transport, education and social spaces. Again, what we've touched on earlier in presentations. Technology enabled smart homes, so have technology integrated to improve safety, security, energy management and independent living, such as our telecare systems, smart thermostats, remote health monitoring and other assistive technologies. And sustainable and future-proof homes built with eco-friendly materials designed for climate resilience and able to adapt to changing needs over time. So we'll just do a bit of a recap. So whilst the focus today has been on those living with dementia, the principles for safe, secure and accessible homes to promote independence, well-being and to reduce hospital and care home admissions is applicable to all of our growing ageing population. Having a home that can adapt to continue to meet individuals' needs as they age and to support healthy and happy ageing, ensure suitable and adaptable future-proof housing is key. Co-production is key more so than ever now as we consider the homes of the near future. We are in the next revolution, the technology revolution. And as an OT, I can provide specialist equipment such as bath lifters or bed levers. I can provide fixed mechanical equipment in the form of stair lifts or vertical lifts. I can access grants for ramped or level access. But what I have to learn very quickly is there's a reliance or a need for technology to enable a person to engage in activities of daily living, to be safe at home and to be independent. Health is advancing in its use of technology to monitor and manage long-term conditions. Housing, smart technology can support us to ensure our homes are heated and ventilated more efficiently, cost-effective and support home health, longevity of the decent home. So what do we need to make sure that all of this works together now and in the future? And that's connectivity. And how can we make this decision? How can we make this happen? Education, investment in technology and science. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. Again, another perspective, but I think one which really complements the presentations that we've heard already today. Has anyone any questions for Lindsay? And just whilst we're gathering our thoughts, Lindsay, can I just ask a question? So your presentation really outlines the importance of home and the role technology can play. How responsive are families? Are they really positive about it, or are there some elements where perhaps they might see that as a little bit intrusive?
Do you know, it's nice to ask the question, because I think what we found over the past couple of years using technology and testing the technologies is often families aren't necessarily wanting us to go, here's the technology. Families are saying, we've got the technology. How can we use this smarter to help our family members? And you know, they want to still be connected and still have that contact, but how can that reduce any level of care strain? And it might be something as simple as an Alexa dot or a Ring doorbell, just so they know someone's in place, someone's okay. So I think having our assistive technology and telecare team in OTs has been really helpful, because we're there to give them that dedicated advice and support on setting up the technology, setting up the notifications, because I think that's where a lot of the anxiety's been. It's not necessarily they want that provision from anybody, they just want that help and support to set it up and use it.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. Trevor?
I think, like all the other speakers, really good today. Fantastically interesting and insightful. The thing a point I would make, Lindsay, was I've been to the Smart House in Sunderland probably maybe 18 months ago now, and I'm sure it's been updated since then. But for anybody who hasn't been, it's really good, because what it does, it sort of puts those things into, you actually see them as opposed to read about them, look at it in a book online. To actually see that door sensor working or that flick switch happening or whatever is just really good, and it gives you a different perspective on how those things work, as opposed to somebody telling you about them. So I mean, if you're still, I'm assuming, Lindsay, you're still offering for people to come along and have a look, because it's a brilliant resource to go and see.
It's really kind of you, Dad. Do you know what? I think one of the key things with the Smart House is it's really important to learn what doesn't work as well, isn't it? Because you can see all these things on Amazon, you think, oh, well, that sounds great, but actually coming, inviting carers and relatives to come in and have a bit play with it, and us as a workforce, we need to understand what works and doesn't work. But thank you. I'm looking forward to the next stage, like I say, making it dementia friendly and looking at what we can do with the discretionary grant element.
It links really well with the virtual house, doesn't it? And that training
Yeah.
tool, it dovetails perfectly with that. But for me, the thing about actually physically walking into a room where you see the curtains closing and things is just really, really brilliant. It's just a fantastic facility.
Thank you.
I think it's how you describe it, Lindsay, isn't it? It demystifies things. Sometimes
Yeah.
when people talk to you something that perhaps you don't know or you're not au fait with it, it's a little bit scary, but it
Yeah.
demystifies it when you can actually see it in front of you.
Yeah.
Okay, Ruth, can we come to you?
Yeah, just a plug for OTs actually, because I've worked with many over the years, and they're great problem solvers. But particularly, they are so good at offering advice to people. So I speak from personal experience. My mother, who was very disabled by arthritis, wanted a profile bed so she could sit up and, be helped to get in and out of bed. And she was seduced by a salesman who arrived at the door with a cactus plant and a box of chocolates and signed up for this bed. It was £3,500. Now, this was 20 years ago. 30 years ago, probably. I was very pleased with herself, and she told me she'd done it. And I said, "Oh, Mum, have you seen the bed?" Anyway, I managed to stop the payment, and she was really cross with me because I'd interfered. But what I arranged for her to do was go to the Disabled Living Centre in Liverpool to see an OT who suggested exactly the right bed at half the cost, and it was fine. So, we know of many older people who spend so much money buying stuff because of the adverts, and it's easy, isn't it? As you say, Amazon. But it may not be the right thing for them. So a big plug for OTs. And I know there aren't enough of you, but it's really important to get that professional advice.
Thanks, Ruth. And Lee is asking what's the referral process. Thank you, Lindsay. I've already done that. I suppose the other one as well, just to note, Leah, the virtual home that Trevor mentioned is an e-platform learning that's available to all health, social care and housing staff in the region as well. So if that's something of interest to you, we can share that information with you as well. It's a risk assessment tool that takes you through the house and lets you know what technology is available based on an individual's needs or preferences. So please reach out and we can share that with you. Any further questions from anyone this morning for Lindsay? Helen?
Oh, sorry, no, I'm preempting. I had something to say to Ruth, but yeah, I can wait for.
Okay, thank you. So if we're all right, if we can just ask the panel to come back together. So I suppose if anyone's got any questions, please put them in the chat or put your hand up. But if I can start, I'd suppose just to pose a question to the four of you are then. So what's the biggest change you'd like to see? If you had a magic wand and you could change anything in the services that either you're involved with or, from your personal experience, and we've heard from some of that this morning, what would that be? Helen, can I start with you?
Yeah, sure. So one thing, I would want to see the privates. I would want to see, the one thing I would like, oh, my wish list is so long. I would like to see the private sector building to these standards because that's going to be slow, I think. And I think if, my presentation and the work we're doing is trying to get all everyday homes to adopt these standards, which is going to make a big difference to people's lives. But we're just talking about the social housing ones at the moment, and and the private housing as the planning develops. But the government committed, the previous government committed to lifetime homes, or M42, which is the standard that in building regulations mandates level entrance to all entrances to the home, and a ground floor washroom, which is big enough to accommodate a shower in future years, and a socket point on the stair to allow for the stair lift. There's about 10 or 20 different criteria involved in it, and the previous government committed to it, and they did a consultation on it, and they said yes, this is what needs doing, and they didn't implement it, and the current government haven't implemented it yet. So there's a campaign to get them to change this. Half of the dementia criteria would be answered with this change. So I would want to see M42 as part of, at the moment it's voluntary under building regulations. I would like to see that. mandated.
Thanks,
That's
Helen.
kind of two, but yeah.
No, we'll allow you to have two. I think they're both linked as well, as you say. And I know in current conversations we've had with planners in the region, given everyone's at a different position, something like that actually coming in from government might be quite helpful for us. Can I just come to Rebecca before we move on? Rebecca?
Hi, yeah. I just wanted to say this is totally random, but just going off the private sector and their housing and stuff. Just by chance, I was viewing some new houses, some new builds recently, and one of the developers were telling us that in one of their houses, I mean, bearing it was one of the most expensive ones, what they had done was they'd done some kind of more efficient housing. That what they had put downstairs was quite a very large downstairs bathroom with gaps and stuff, and a downstairs kind of extra room. And what that was to do with was more so future proofing. So if you had an elderly parent or yourself or someone who needed some downstairs living, they had put the plumbing right underneath so that you could then change that watering closet into a bathroom that was adaptive for kind of older people to manage, people with dementia and stuff, and that the extra room downstairs could be used like living quarters and stuff, which I thought was so random. But I loved to hear that, and I thought, oh, I've never considered that with new build houses and stuff. But the fact that that was in their mind as a developer was a step forward in any way. So it was just to mention that obviously they're nowhere near kind of adapting more housing for older people in the population, but the fact that that had been considered in their building scheme was quite impressive. So it was just to mention that they're not there yet, but I mean they are starting to possibly think that way, which is great.
No, that's great. Thank you, Rebecca. It's really refreshing to hear, isn't it? And I know at a recent event I was at, someone said something like, you don't build a house as you age, you build a house for the first house you move into. So you'll have a starter home or you'll have a family home. So the fact that developers are now starting to think about that when they're building them is really refreshing. And I think hopefully they're starting to listen to some of the conversations that we're having.
Yeah,
so thank you for that.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Ruth, can I come to you? Your wish list.
Oh, it's very long. I mean, I'd support Helen's view that, government leadership on the housing issue would be so helpful, as it would on so many things. Anyway, but I suppose the thing that I would promote, as you would expect me to from Tide, is to work with carers as equal partners. They know the person with dementia better than anybody. And so whatever capacity you're working with somebody with dementia or helping them or supporting them, please involve the carer and please listen to them, because, as I say, they're the experts. They know that person better than anybody.
No, I think that's a really helpful challenge for us, and hopefully we'll see that, or we've seen that this morning coming through in terms of now really adopting those co-production principles, understanding that, we look at it through a particularly perhaps a professional lens. That's not going to always be helpful to people who are needing some support from us as well. So no, that's helpful. Thank you, Ruth. Phil?
I think, well, I absolutely agree with Helen and Ruth on their views there. I think one of the other things that I've come across is, I suppose, education, and this is more of a softer thing, and lots of people seem to be moving at crisis point. So they go into hospital and they don't go home, and it's devastating for the families and for them themselves. So I suppose there's a lot about education there as well. How do we start working with people earlier to start future-proofing homes or thinking about housing longer term? It's a difficult one because people don't want to think about getting old and the problems that get associated with getting old. And we're working a lot on that at the moment to try and, I think, you start building an educational piece, not just for people, but for professionals as well, and seeing how we can change different aspects of housing for the future.
That's a really interesting one, Phil. And I know when we've talked to just people in general, what they'll say is, I want to live where I live now. Why should I have to move as my needs kind of grow? I want to be in the community I was born in, but actually there isn't an awful lot of choice. And when I do hit crisis, I either don't know who to talk to, or different parts of the system don't talk to each other, so then your choice becomes less as well, doesn't it? So
Absolutely.
that information, advice and guidance is a really important one for us, and definitely something we're looking through our kind of community of practice about how we could do something, whether that's even just a set of principles that we could adopt in making sure that people kind of have the right information at the right time. Okay, thank you. Lindsay?
I think for me, it's making sure, I'm going to big up the OTs. I'm going to say where that the designers are liaising with the OTs, because I think we don't want to do alterations or adaptations if we need to. And, you know, even if somebody does need those adaptations, it's quite disruptive to have them done. So it really makes more sense to have that OT input earlier on. And that, you know, it's about prevention, isn't it? So if we get the home right now, it's going to be better for longer. And we don't, like I say, we don't want to do those alterations and adaptations. That's obviously also going to improve on health outcomes, you know, reducing the risk of falls, etc. So that's going to help our health colleagues. And then from the local authority, you know, you've got those managed budgets to manage those alterations. So, you know, it's really worthwhile from a financial point of view. So yes, don't forget us, OTs.
How could we ever forget you, Lindsay?
I know, you know.
Never. But you're right, OT are really important, and that kind of getting it right first time rather than changing it later with the cost is a really important one. Any questions from anyone else on the call this morning for the panel? I've just got one final question, if I can pose to you, if you may. I think that's been a really interesting conversation. I think those kind of perspectives gelled really nicely and gave a different flavour from each of your professions, but the services that you're delivering as well. Just be interested to ask you individually, is there anything you've heard this morning that you think, oh, that's a really good idea, I'm going to take that away with me? Phil, come to you first.
I think the one from Lindsay in the house. I've just emailed my colleague actually to say hold off buying some more of that kit until we go over to Sunderland and just. And I think they've got it right, but I would much prefer that they go there and have a look and diversify that offer really and make the best use of resources possible. So that's where we'll be coming to you, Lindsay, soon.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, and Ruth, any takeaways for you today?
I suppose overall it's the message about getting round the table, talking to each other, having those difficult conversations, because that's how partnerships get going, isn't it? And sorting that out, and then you can work together constructively. I mean, I think Helen's presentation demonstrated that really in terms of doing it together and getting people on board. It's really important.
Thank you. And Helen?
Thanks, Ruth. Good to hear. I thought that your presentation was really interesting, and there were two things in particular that I really wanted to take away. The first is the My Home Matters booklet, which I was thinking would apply even beyond people living with dementia. I recently moved my parents, and if I'd had those prompts to talk to my dad, who's the one without dementia, I think there are things there that would have helped those conversations happen more easily. You know, it was a good story in the end. They did move, but it wasn't easy, and I think it would would help everyone to have that ready, like you're suggesting. You know, I think some part of the learning from this session is that being ready earlier avoids those kind of crisis situations later. So that, I just thought that was great. And also the Living Grief and Bereavement workshop sounds really interesting. I'm talking from a personal view now, because I think that might, I think that would be really useful for my dad. So yeah, I can see your work, how it's so useful. I mean, all the speakers, really great work, but yeah, there's a lot to take away from me from all of it.
Thanks, Helen. And I think that's maybe one of the things for us as a collective this morning. There are some things that we can do quite easily that could potentially make such a big difference, not least the design standards, the fantastic resources that Ruth's got available, the challenges that Lindsay and Phil's put into us as well. So some things that could be quite, quite easy if we all agreed as an organisations. We're all going to adopt the kind of the My Home Matters booklet, and we'll make sure that staff can see it. So hopefully that'll give people some food for thought. Lindsay, anything from yourself you're going to take away from this morning?
To be honest, it sounds cliche, but I think it's really important that to just hear from different perspectives and do that regularly and just see where people are on their journey and what's worked and what's not worked. So there's a lot for me to go and take away, reflect, digest, and then probably reach out, because the key message is it's co-production, it's liaising with each other and learning. So thanks very much. It's been a great morning.
Thanks, Lindsay. And yes, Leah, we will share the presentation. So this morning's being recorded and that will be available, and we'll share all of the slides as well too. Hopefully we have hit our brief, which was the first priority of making sure that we are sharing how we can maintain independence for people. So thank you very much for that. Just a final plea that the feedback forms are available. We do want the sessions to be as appropriate and useful for people as possible. So if you do get the opportunity to complete that feedback form, that would be really, really helpful. And just a massive thank you this morning to the speakers. I found that really interesting. A lot of food for thought, some quite stark comments, I think, that made me think personally as well. And just want to say very, very much thank you for your time. And if there are no further questions, you've got a whole 9 minutes left before your next meeting. So thank you very much, everyone. And if there's anything on there that's interested you, please get in touch with the programme team and we can point you in the right direction. Thank you ever so much, everyone. Have a good day.